Welcome. My name is Kelly Carroll, and I have the pleasure of chairing the Bennington Community Policing Advisory Review Board. This is our monthly meeting for March 16th, 2023 in the Bennington Fire Facility, and it is 6:04 p.m. And I'm going to first ask the board members to briefly introduce themselves. So if we can start over here. Okay.
Marsh Hudson Knapp.
I'm Robert Ebert.
William Greer.
Jeff Vickers.
Scott Richmond.
Okay. We also have Jim Vines from Cat TV. I want to thank that's with us tonight. We're waiting on our liaison. I apologize for his delay. He should be here any moment. Tom Haley from the Select Board. And we're also welcoming Chief Paul Doucette from the Bennington Police Department as our guest this evening. So before we get started, I'd like to start with the CPARB resolution and the town vision statement. Through the creation of the CPARB, the town of Bennington, its police department, and the select board are committed to working with the entire community to ensure safety, accountability, transparency, and trust to move Bennington towards achieving its vision of becoming a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life. So, thank you. First on the agenda is the consent of agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
What's on the consent?
The consent of agenda is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. Robert, did you not?
I will, yeah, I will so move. I will so move.
Second.
Okay, all right. So the previous meeting minutes were previously distributed. Everyone should have had the chance to review them. Are there any changes to the minutes of February 16th? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I move, yeah.
Second?
Second.
So moved. The minutes of February 16th, 2023 are approved as submitted. Thank you, Marsh. Next on our agenda, we have public comment. Do we have anybody who would like to speak for public comment? I didn't see anyone's name after I put, no. Okay, well, thank you. So next on our list is the Quality Control Internal Investigation and Discipline Procedure. And here to go through that procedure for us is Chief Paul Doucette. And Chief, yes, up to the podium, please, and thank you. And I want to thank you and your department for everything that you've been doing the last week with the storm. The last couple of months, there's been some very traumatic events in town. So thank you to you and your team. And thank you for joining us tonight. And I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. My name is Paul J. Doucette Jr. I'm the Chief of Police and Public Safety Director for the town of Bennington. Ms. Carroll, I appreciate your comments. My staff has been working diligently despite our staffing levels. We have had several traumatic events, and you know, when you mentioned the police department and the most recent storms, we have to kind of give a shout out to all of our friends at Green Mountain Power and Public Works, Department of Public Works. I mean, what about those guys and girls, right? I mean, the roads in Bennington have been fantastic, and which helps the police also because when the roads are in great shape, the number of traffic crashes go way down. So we applaud their efforts as well.
Kudos all around.
So it seems like a long time coming. We've worked very hard. Lieutenant Grandy and I worked very hard to make sure that we can continue our efforts with the Community Policing Advisory Review Board. The community knows that we have attended joint trainings. And this piece here that we're going to go over tonight, hopefully not word for word, but because it is rather long, we're proud of the fact that we were able to put this document together and have it reviewed. I did share it with Ms. Carroll, the chair of the board, and I understand that all members of CPARB did receive the procedures piece of the policy and procedures for the quality control and internal investigations piece. With this document here, this is give and take. I want to go back and forth and get feedback from the members of CPARB and the community that are here tonight, if they so wish. We also want to make sure that at the end, we added Section 11 compliments. The policy that was approved did not really talk about compliments, but on our website, you can leave a complaint, concern, or a compliment. So we wanted to make sure that we had that in here so that we can share not just the concerns and the complaints, but we can share the compliments that come in. Last year, in 2022, the Bennington Police Department had a total of 6 complaints that we conducted internal affairs investigations on, we do keep a statistical summary of those complaints. We had 6 concerns and 15 compliments. Once we create this document and we attach the procedures to the policy, we can then begin sharing all of those with CPARB, which really is our goal. We want to be transparent. We want you to know. As you all know from our training a couple of weeks ago, they'll be redacted to protect the complainant, and also so that the I'm not going to say officer, because we have civilian staff, professional staff at the office too, that have to abide by this policy. So we do pride ourselves on integrity and professionalism, what's important here is if you took the time to review this, and again, I'm not going to go over this word for word, we talk about origin of complaints and allegations of violations of the police department's policies and procedures can actually be initiated from outside of the police department or inside of the police department. What we have here is the allegations that are made have to go up through the chain of command, and they have to actually touch my desk. And from there, the complaints, if warranted, and it is actually a violation of policy or procedure, or could be an offense, those will be thoroughly investigated. We also, this also allows us to take care of minor misunderstandings with people in the community. I used this one with you in the last training. Sometimes people call and they don't understand why they received a traffic violation, a Vermont civil violation complaint, instead of a warning. For example, that's up to the officer's discretion, and the remedy there for someone that has never had a violation and is concerned that they got a violation, it's not really a complaint about the officer. It's a misunderstanding as to why they received a Vermont civil violation complaint versus a warning. And the remedy there really is through the Vermont Judicial Bureau in a traffic court setting. And sometimes the hearing officer can raise or lower the fine, remove points if that's what people are looking for. And a lot of times things like that can be addressed. If people aren't satisfied with an explanation on what could be a misunderstanding, they still have the opportunity to fill out the citizen complaint form, and it goes through the chain of command there. So we also have the procedures is set up so that I would take the complaint and bring that back to Lieutenant Grandy if investigation is warranted, and our people that will conduct internal affairs investigations must receive proper training, and they can't just say, oh, I'm just going to investigate this complaint. They have to have actual internal affairs investigation training. At this point, for the people that have had internal affairs investigation training, that training has come from Roger Williams University through their law enforcement program down there. So We always want to make sure that that citizen complaint form is available to the public, and if someone chooses not to fill out the complaint and a supervisor takes their complaint, it is the supervisor's responsibility to then transcribe as much information as they obtained onto that citizen complaint form so that we have a record. It talks about in our procedures here that what the rights and obligations of the member of the department is or are. We do have a working agreement with our employees, all of our full-time employees. Lieutenant Grandy, myself, and my administrative assistant are not covered under the working agreement. We are covered under the Town of Bennington Personnel Manual. And there are certain sections of the Town Personnel Manual that will cover our employees as well. Prior to investigations starting into a member, the member is brought in and is advised of the complaint and the investigation. All the interviews that are conducted with the employee are limited to the activities and the circumstances of the event, the conduct of the act that is alleged, and the member of the department may be requested to participate in other investigative processes throughout the investigation. In here, the procedures indicate that investigations will be completed promptly, normally within 30 days. Sometimes, if people are out of the area, it may take a little bit longer to get that investigation complete. I am authorized under the procedures to allow the complaint to go out to 60 days with a maximum time limit of 90 days. In the years that I've been the chief, we've never had one go out 90 days, but just like I said, in case the people are not in the area or they're traveling, and we need to get a hold of them and conduct interviews either in person or by Zoom or what have you, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Ultimately, the quality control and investigations piece of this procedure is my responsibility, or whomever the chief will be in the future upon my retirement. And during the course of the investigation, when the internal affairs investigator is conducting the investigation, they report directly to Lieutenant Grandy, and in turn, Lieutenant Grandy, it's his responsibility to keep me informed on what's going on with the investigation. We talked about already that only trained personnel. I'm sorry, Marsh, I didn't see your hand.
I'm just wondering, how many people in the department presently are trained to do the investigations?
Right now we have 5.
Okay, cool, thanks.
That have had the training. We are looking at sending additional people to training, and that's budgeted in fiscal year 2024, which starts July 2023. Cool, thanks. Okay. With that being said, again, the supervisors can take care of minor complaints, and trained personnel, if an investigation is warranted, will conduct those. Once I meet with the lieutenant and we go over the complaint, it is not my responsibility, it's Lieutenant Grandy's responsibility to select someone to do that. I don't influence him. That is his decision. The investigator or the officer or the investigator rather that's conducting this does have the authority to interview all the personnel regarding any infractions of the police department's policies, rules, regulations, and we put in here very clearly that there can be no retaliatory measures taken against anyone that's involved in the investigation. We also, during the course of the investigation, all records and reports from any source under our control, under the Bennington Police Department's control, will be immediately available to the investigator upon request. If there's an incident report or there is video, for example, from another law enforcement agency that may have been involved in this incident, we can certainly make that request. But our reports are immediately available. And Once the investigation is complete, there's a report that's prepared, and that goes through the chain of command. So it will go to Lieutenant Grandy, and then it will make its way to me through the chain of command. I then take that investigation, the videos, reports, and I review those, I review that process, and then I can actually take those, this is the important piece, I can take all of that information and I can provide it to the Community Policing Advisory Review Board, which is all of you. Obviously we'll be, as I already stated, redacting the names as appropriate. Any information that is provided to members of the Community Policing Advisory Review Board will exclude personnel records because that's protected under the working agreement in Vermont law. And then the review by the Community Policing Advisory Review Board has to be in accordance with its mandate as set in the resolution for Community Policing and Review Board. So that's a big piece here. Upon completion of the review, you will share your impressions with me and more than likely Lieutenant Grandy in the executive session to the extent with such review implicates the provisions. And then the results of your review will be given in an open session of CPARB, and we'll move forward from there. It is my responsibility to maintain a complete record of complaints, and the records have to be maintained separate from other department records, and they are locked and they remain confidential. We also talk about the assignment of an internal affairs function does not relieve a supervisor of their responsibilities. Go ahead, Marsh.
You want me to wait till the end?
Yes, please.
Okay.
No problem. No, that's okay. So for example, not everything needs to be an internal affairs investigation. If there's a complaint that comes in and a supervisor can handle that, that is their responsibility. The procedures also talks about setting a firm set of penalties and corrective measures. When I reviewed, or when we completed this, we reviewed other policies and procedures, and there really isn't a practical way to make it so that, okay, this penalty is for this. For example, officer rudeness on a traffic stop. You have to look at the totality of the circumstances. Does it warrant a verbal counseling? Is it retraining? Is it a letter of reprimand? And you have to take a look at each individual incident and make a determination that way. Other pieces of this, when we receive the complaint, we do acknowledge that to the complainant that their complaint was received, and then if this, while this investigation is underway, people that made the complaint do have the right to be periodically informed of the status of their complaint. Especially if for some reason we have to extend that out for a period of time. It is my responsibility as the police chief to make sure that on an ongoing basis that I compile a statistical summary of all complaints that are investigated, and that statistical summary, we're making that available to members of the Bennington Police Department as well as the Community Policing Advisory Review Board. And the summary report indicates the need for training. If that is detected, CPARB can make appropriate recommendations to me, it also gives us an opportunity to take a look at the complaints that are received and really take a look at practices, procedures, conduct, Under my authority as the chief, I review every investigation to determine the disposition. That is part of the working agreement, and the following findings can be made. It can be unfounded, the officer can be exonerated. It could be non-sustained, sustained, or non-involved. And there's 5 different categories that I can fall back on, and then once the investigation is over, it is my responsibility to notify the complainant in writing of the outcome of the investigation. The procedures go on to talk a little bit about myself and the town manager being able to suspend members or officers from duty as taken from the working agreement. The way the working agreement is set up, so that you all know, is that I can reprimand someone orally, I can reprimand them in writing, and I can suspend them for emergent situations, and then they have the right to a hearing, and we have to fall back on the working agreement and follow the procedures in the working agreement. There is a section in here that talks about discipline, and that we strive to engage in progressive and corrective discipline. Sometimes people make mistakes. There's a difference between, making a mistake once or twice versus 5 times, but we think it's fair, and per the working agreement, the discipline must be progressive. We also recognize the fact that training may be something that should be used as a way to improve a member's performance. For example, we had an officer at one point who was involved in a few minor motor vehicle crashes. Not that he was driving reckless, he just had some issues, and we sent him for driver training as a form of discipline, to try to correct that behavior. Obviously, the severity of the disciplinary action goes along with the cause of action, and again, we have to follow the working agreement and the personnel manual. We do encourage our staff to, our supervisors to counsel and coach members so that it's a learning experience if it's a minor infraction. We are up and running now with our Guardian tracking system, and actions taken following the entry into the Guardian tracking system have to be consistent with the provisions of this directive, and not every entry is discipline. I could have an officer who's struggling. Ms. Carroll talked about some of the horrific things that have happened over the last couple of weeks in Bennington. That does take a toll on our people, and perhaps someone's late for work a few times. We're going to enter that into the Guardian tracking system, not so much for discipline, but as an early warning system, so that we can determine if this person is affected and we need to make a referral to get them mental health counseling, or we need to make an appointment and take them. So the Guardian tracking system is new to us. We're still learning the Guardian tracking system. There are agencies that we've communicated with in Connecticut and Rhode Island who just absolutely love the Guardian tracking system. And of course, like any other software, we put the program in place, and then there's Guardian tracking, the people that make the program, they're looking to sell us the next step, and I just told them that we need to learn how to use the first set that the first part of it. So, and again, it's new. So take that into consideration as well. Just because we make that entry into Guardian tracking, it's not always discipline. Okay. So there are many factors in the disciplinary decisions, and we again, as I said, we pride ourselves on professionalism, and we have to follow the code of conduct. We do recognize that our people will make errors from time to time. There's no doubt about that, and our disciplinary action must be fair and consistent. So. As we move on, there are factors in the disciplinary factors: degree of harm, member experience, whether or not the act was intentional, and we also take a look at the member's past record. If they've had an exemplary record and they've made an error in judgment, we have to take all of these things into consideration. The supervisors and their authority to discipline, this part of the procedures talks about outcomes or review or investigations that might result in the continuum of responses, which include education and training, performance counseling, corrective action, or discipline. So non-disciplinary outcomes, for example, would be verbal performance counseling in a guardian tracking entry, training or retraining, written performance notation, written counseling, and a referral to the Employee Assistance Program if needed. I do, as I've explained to you before, but with the community here, I think it's important, we do have the opportunity to make a referral to the Employee Assistance Program, and the member of the department must attend. It's not an option. And that's only happened a couple times in my career as the police chief. Disciplinary outcomes do include a written reprimand, a suspension, and in addition to the suspension, sometimes there could be a forfeiture of what we call earned time, whether it's vacation time or personal time. And then there's also a reassignment. Perhaps you are removed from the detective division and placed back in patrol. There is the full suspension with forfeiture of pay, and then of course dismissal from the department. As I mentioned already, under my authority, as far as the disciplinary actions go, I do have the authority to issue the verbal reprimands, the written reprimands. I can temporarily suspend someone, place them on administrative leave, and then I can recommend to the town manager further disciplinary action. The town manager and I combined can issue verbal or written reprimands, and then there is an appeal process, which again is part of the working agreement, and we're certainly putting that out in this procedure so that people understand that there is an appeal process. Anybody that is dismissed from the Bennington Police Department, we must follow the working agreement. They are entitled to union representation, they're entitled to an attorney, and we have to conform with the state law on that. The records, as we've already discussed, maintenance and retention of records and of disciplinary actions are governed by the working agreement and the personnel manual. As I told you, all the records have to be kept separate and maintained. And then as a reference or a resource to this policy and procedure, I listed the working agreement as well as the personnel manual. We added section 11. I'm just going to touch on it very briefly. Nowhere in the policy did we touch on compliments. We do actually get a lot of compliments. We used to take compliments. I'll use Lieutenant Grandy because he's here. We used to take compliments, and when the compliments came in, a lot of people like to send little notes, cards. Now in the age of technology, they're through email. We would take those, and I would put them, I would write a little note on it, great job, keep up the good work. I'd make a photocopy so the lieutenant knew, and the original would go to the employee. Just a little way to pump them up, do people write compliments and send thank you notes when they receive a ticket? Yes. It's amazing. And do people send in compliments when an officer stops to change a tire when it's 93 degrees out? Absolutely. But we've never tracked that. We just hand off the note. So we've changed that now, or we will be changing that. We have this section here for compliments. Once again, it's my responsibility to make sure that the record of compliments is maintained. When a compliment is received, it comes to me through the chain of command. And then I would get together with the lieutenant, review the compliment, and the compliment is documented and then provided to the employee. It is my responsibility to maintain that statistical summary of all compliments, and that statistical summary would be provided to you, the Community Policing Advisory Review Board, on a quarterly basis. And if you wish to review the compliment and the information surrounding the compliment, we can do that. The review of compliments by CPARB has to be performed in accordance with its mandate, once again, as set forth in the resolution of Community Policing and Review Board, as the same may be amended by the Select Board. We know that's what it says, so we made sure that's in here. And then after you review compliments on a quarterly basis, you can share your impressions with me at your meetings. And I would take any feedback back to the people that are involved in that. And so, you know, quite a bit, 10 pages of procedures on how we handle complaints, and 1 page, about 3/4 of a page, on how we handle compliments. But again, I think it's important that we show you both.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions before I open it up to questions for the rest of the board. The easy one. When it comes to communicating with the complainant, whether the fact that you've received the complaint or how the complaint was resolved, and you said the complainant gets notification, correct?
That is correct.
You communicate with them. Is any of that documented in the process that stays on file? Like,
Yes. So
within Guardian, is there a documentation that you reached out at that day, or is that?
So, for example, some people would prefer to communicate by electronic means. So if I were to communicate with you because you filed a complaint, I'm printing that email and I'm attaching that to the case file so that I have that document that shows that I complied with the policy and procedures. That's how that will be handled.
And the same thing with like your response back to me, that you've received it and how it comes out, everything. And you keep copies of all that documentation that you communicated that out?
In the investigation file, yes.
Okay, all right. That was my first one. And then my second one, and I apologize if I'm confused on this, but with the Guardian tracking system, some things would be disciplinary, some wouldn't be, good, bad, compliments go in there, and, you know, and other complaints, concerns. You're going to summarize those, and we're going to get those. We'll be able to look for trending based on the overall big picture. But could you just talk briefly about what steps are in place for trending for specific personnel that we wouldn't see? So like, I'm probably not explaining this. You had six complaints. If all 6 complaints were on the same issue, we as a board would think, oh, maybe we have this issue here and maybe we could do, this training might help, you know. But what is set up, and I know you're progressive, if it's 1 officer for all 6? Because we wouldn't know that. So what safeguards are in there? Maybe I'm not explaining that right.
I understand. And if I don't explain it back properly, you let me know. So if we have an officer that continues, as I said earlier, you know, the first time's a mistake, the second time might be an oversight, 3, 4, 5, and 6, not. So we would be, you know, we would obviously be maintaining that, and if the same officer continues to make the same mistake, then obviously something wasn't taught properly, either at the academy or through the FTO process. We would evaluate that, and then we would provide proper training, not at number 6, more than likely at number 2. But I think that's the easiest way to explain it. We're going to know, especially using Guardian tracking, because it's going to say Paul Doucette, Kelly Carroll, Camillo Grande, and, you know, the entries are going to be made, and we're actually going to see that, you know, and I think the easiest one, you know, in talking to some colleagues down in Rhode Island, some of the things that they see, a lot of tardiness, minor motor vehicle crashes, backing into things, and, you know, so those are things that we would definitely have to keep an eye on. But again, for us, it's there. You know, for you, yes, I understand what you're saying. Names are redacted because we have to do that. But at the same time, not that you're going to figure out who the person is. I don't want to say that, but you're going to see that if there are a couple of things, let's just use a backing accident. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns takes that very seriously. Your first backing accident, at least since I've been the chief, is a written reprimand, because we take that seriously, obviously, and you know, especially with all the safety equipment that we have now. Everybody can stare at the camera, but you also have to look backwards. That's what we're supposed to do. So if you had an incident where you had too many backing accidents, you're going to see that progressive, because I'm going to come here and I'm going to explain to you, oh, we had a backing accident. And you're going to get to, I'm going to explain part of that. You're going to have the opportunity to ask me questions. Oh, gosh, we had another backing accident. What was the outcome, Chief? Oh, 2 days off without pay. And going back to the Academy for Driving School. So again, I think that once we get the procedures in place and we attach them to the policy, I think a lot of this will fall into place for all of you and for us. You know, it would be easier that way, I think.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, and I wanted to make sure that I asked that because I have had a couple of people from the community express concerns about specific personnel issues, and I do remind everybody that we are not an accountability board, and we can look for trends based on the statistics that we get. So it's good to know that the Guardian system and the other things are in place to identify should there be a specific officer with a specific trend of incidents.
So I think another opportunity to elaborate on that. We all know, like right now, our legislators are in session. By July 1st, we will have a whole slew of law changes. It is our responsibility, and we work with Erica Marthage at the Bennington County State's Attorney's Office to do what we call legislative review. It is important that we make sure that our staff knows what changes have been made, and it could be something as simple as the officer didn't understand the law change, and the supervisor needs to sit down with the officer and explain that. It could be a change. Well, let's use a communication specialist, a dispatcher. Could be a change in policy. A lot of changes happening with the Bennington Rescue Squad right now. If you saw the paper today, they've made some promotions. With that and new people in place, there's going to be changes. So they're going to notify us, more than likely, of what their changes are and how they want things to be done. And you have to remember that I have full-time people that do it every day, and then I have part-time people that do it on weekends or maybe 1 or 2 nights a week. So it's my responsibility to make sure that all of these people get educated, and it could be as simple as they didn't make it to the training. That's why we have, like when we do, I'll give you a great example. So when we put these procedures out for the personnel to review, they have the opportunity to review. They have the opportunity to meet with the lieutenant or I for further clarification if they don't understand it. And they sign a document saying that they've read it and they understand it. And we maintain that in a file. And it's not for a gotcha down the road. It's just, hey, you know, you had this opportunity. Please explain what you didn't understand. And I think that's probably the easiest way to explain that. We do every year. I order new Title 23 books. They're this thick. Motor vehicle law changes in Vermont on a regular basis, and we provide the officers with the books. We get a synopsis of what the law changes are. A lot of times it's, for example, fines. Fines on different offenses may change. We've seen fines go from $162 down to $76. If the officer doesn't catch that change, then they're writing a ticket for $162. That ticket may make it to the Vermont Judicial Bureau, and the Vermont Judicial Bureau is going to send it back saying that there needs to be an amendment because the fine is $76. So those are little things that can be corrective.
Okay. It's good to know you keep track of that, the details, because we can't. So anyway, thank you. So we'll start with questions.
I've got a few.
Robert?
Yeah, just a few.
We do have to be a little cognizant of time. We have Brian too, so.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I forgot about Brad.
Chief, thanks for coming here tonight and
Thank you.
talking to us about this. Can you give us an example of a minor complaint that would be dealt with at the supervisory level?
Yes. For example, a minor complaint would be something like an officer issued, as we talked about, issued a Vermont civil violation complaint instead of a warning. The officer, another minor complaint is sometimes officers respond to situations, and depending on staffing levels, we may go back a day or two later to avoid confrontation because we have to de-escalate.
Right.
Sometimes we've had minor misunderstandings where people are upset that people weren't just dragged off in handcuffs. That's not what we do, okay? And so that's a misunderstanding. That's a minor complaint, and when you explain to the complainant that, one, it wasn't witnessed by the officer, and two, we tried to de-escalate. People went their separate ways. They weren't arrested that night, but they came down 2 days later and they were processed and issued a citation. Those are minor complaints that can be resolved by speaking with the supervisor. It's not an internal affairs investigation because no one got arrested.
Okay. You mentioned specifically language about no retaliatory measures by anyone involved. If a member of the department in investigation was determined to be engaging in retaliatory measures, what would be an appropriate penalty or corrective action for that?
If they interfere with the investigation, it is, I mean, I obviously didn't read this to you word for word or to the community word for word, but they would be subject to disciplinary action. And for me, as the police chief, I'd be speaking with the town manager saying, Officer Smith has retaliated against Officer Jones and threatened Officer Jones, and Officer Smith needs to be suspended pending the outcome of this investigation.
Okay, great. You said you'll be maintaining a statistical summary of all the complaints that are investigated. For our purposes, does that mean we will only be getting the complaints that resulted in investigation as opposed to all of the complaints received?
The complaints that are investigated are the ones that are going to come before this board.
Okay, the ones that are investigated, okay. Would we be notified or given information of an internal affairs investigation stemming from inside the department, not the result of a complaint?
Yes.
We'll get that.
Remember, I put it in the procedures that the complaint can be initiated from outside or inside.
Okay, great. And under supervisor can determine discipline at the supervisory level, including or action, including training. If that training involves cost, does the supervisor have the authority to spend that money, or does that need to come to you before?
So there's actually a form to be filled out, and that form goes to the lieutenant, and then he puts his comments on there, and then it comes to me, and I sign off on that. So I'm the one that I'm the fiscal agent, so I'm the one that makes the decision on that training. But I mean, if it is recommended that someone go back to the academy or go to Roger Williams for retraining or whatever it is, more than likely that's going to get approved, but I make that final decision.
But other discipline at the supervisory level that didn't involve money wouldn't necessarily reach your desks. It could end at the supervisor, begin and end at the supervisor.
No. So any complaint that comes in that a supervisor takes, that supervisor is required to send an email message to the lieutenant,
Okay.
and then the lieutenant forwards that to me.
Yeah.
So we know what, so we have a pretty good grasp on what's going on. It's not, so I think I understand where you're going with this, but it's, if a supervisor takes the complaint, they are required, and it's minor, they're still required to write a couple of paragraphs and send it to the lieutenant, and then he sends that to me.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Marcia?
One of the things that we had a discussion about when we were looking at this, and it is on, in the earlier stages, was another consideration in considering the discipline for a problem, was to consider the creativity that an officer might be utilizing in a new situation. And in looking at community policing, I've noticed there's been a shift of influence or interest in officers becoming more creative and working with the community to do things in a better way. And I didn't know if that was what that aspect of creativity was about, or what it meant.
Can you give me an example?
Do you remember our discussion about, I remember you talking about when an officer's discipline is being evaluated, the creativity that if they're involved in some kind of new creative effort, they make a mistake.
I believe that was within the policy, and that was discussed at the select board.
Right.
The, using the creative, kind of out-of-the-box approach to a situation.
Right. Allowing the officer
Yeah, I
to
don't think
take
it's
the
in the
initiative.
That
procedure
wasn't a
here.
factor in your disciplinary, I thought that was a factor in your disciplinary decision.
So did I.
I think you're getting it confused with the policy that was, it
Maybe
was
it was
in the policy.
and not in the procedure?
Correct, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. And I think that, listen, we're open to a lot of things, especially when there's misunderstandings. We've had opportunities to sit down with people that have complained and have the officers sit down and explain what happened. And a lot of times, quite honestly, that's what people are looking for. They want an explanation. A lot of times we find people don't really want to file a complaint. They're just looking for an explanation. And, having an officer, I'm not opposed to that, and we've done it. Back in the day, it's been a long time, but back in the day, Bennington College had a program where, people could get together and talk about their differences. And it didn't seem to last. It didn't seem to last very long. I can't remember how long ago it was, but that is always an option.
Cool.
Next question?
Somewhere recently, and I'm not sure whether you've talked about this at a public gathering or just in our training, but you talked about the agreement that the police department is working with the mental health service in town.
Marcia, I'm going to start. Those are the MOUs you're talking about, and I don't think that's really on the agenda.
Well,
I don't think that's would the MOUs part of the procedure?
No.
No, those are the memorandums of understanding with all of the organizations throughout town.
I thought what Paul mentioned was in this talk here was how staff, whether they be
I understand what you're saying.
dispatchers or
Yeah,
officers.
let me explain that to save time. So we have the opportunity to refer people to the Employee Assistance Program as part of these procedures. We are working with United Counseling Service to allow all members to participate, but that's not part of this. That's a little different. So in other words, Employee Assistance Program, I can make people attend a session or 2 or 3, whatever is deemed necessary as part of these procedures. But that other piece is completely different.
Okay. Well, it sounds great to have this dimension of life being seriously considered, because police officers are people, and talking with a friend who long ago was a police officer, he was just saying he went through some terrible situations, and there never was any sense that he should get care from people in mental health, and it was really tough for him. So it's great that you all are paying attention to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Will?
I don't have any urgent questions except one. When you were discussing the legislative review, and you said that because a lot comes into effect in July 1st, and that's with the state's attorney. Is that open to the public, or is that just for you and the personnel?
When Erica Marthage sets those trainings, that's usually for law enforcement.
Okay.
But we also get documents from our insurance company, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and we'll share those with our personnel as well. And I think just because you only had that one question, I'll give you a bonus. If we, maybe at some point down the road, we can add it to the agenda, I can let Ms. Carroll know. If I get something from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, I think it would be great to share that with all of you so you understand what we see.
Yep, even that alone would be perfect, but we can just add it to the agenda
Yeah,
one day. So
I'm just going to make myself a quick note on that.
Yep.
A couple quick ones, just general questions. So you said there were 6 concerns or complaints versus 15 compliments. That was for 2022? Is that?
Well, that's, unfortunately, we didn't start collecting compliments until about halfway through 2022, just because we saw where all of this was going, and it's important that we look at both. So we had 6 internal affairs investigations in 2022, and once we started tracking the compliments, we had 15. I'm hoping that in 2023, quarterly, once we get all of this in place, we can just start doing that, the compliments on a quarterly basis. And, the complaints, the way I'd like to establish this with Ms. Carroll is to let her know, hey, we had this complaint, and we'd like to meet on this.
Yeah. And I guess the compliments wouldn't factor into this, but just as a general, is that 6 investigations for 2022, is that typical or average, or is that low or high, or?
No, that seems to be relatively average.
Okay.
There have been some years we've only had a couple, 2 or 3. We never seem to have, I don't even want to use the number 10 because I don't think it's ever been that high, but on average, we might have a couple a year, and not a lot.
Yeah, okay. And then just with the compliments, there's the like you noted, pages and pages and pages about discipline, which is important. And then the section on compliments, beyond just letting the person know, is there any sort of recognition or reward for compliments similar to the consequences or potential punishments for not good behavior? Are there things to reward for good behavior?
Other than getting a pat on the back from the chief, no.
Okay.
No, I'm not trying to be funny.
I know.
I'm
just, to me, maybe it's worth encouraging good behavior as equally, or, try to foster that and do something there. But, okay. And then my last, 2 questions. When people are notified of the final outcome, are they typically satisfied with that response after the investigation, or does it vary depending on the situation? How does that feed back to you, or do you get that feedback, or sometimes maybe you don't even hear anything? I don't know.
I've never had anybody come back and say, well, this isn't right, or anything like that. That would be new.
Okay.
But again, I think that sometimes, you can send a letter, but you can also talk to people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, well, thank you for explaining this. I understand. I've never really had any major fallout as a result of.
So generally, I would assume that
Yeah.
they're satisfied. So, and then the final, if there is a complaint, or maybe a compliment, I guess, as well, and then we receive information on that, will we know if that's police officer or somebody else in the department? Will there be any distinction to know?
The way it's worded now, it's member.
Okay.
Like I know we're running, short on time, but I have to tell you, yesterday there were power outages, right? And quite a few people were calling, my power's out, my power's out. You know, our communications team, our dispatchers, not only were they calling Green Mountain Power trying to get estimates, they were calling people back, trying to reassure them that, you know, Green Mountain Power was doing the best that they can and things like that. We're not just taking calls from people and saying, your power's out, why are you calling the police? We try to explain to them, we take their information because we do have the inside line for Green Mountain Power. As busy as the dispatchers were, they were taking the time to relay the information to Green Mountain Power and then calling people back, trying to give them reassurance. To me, with everything that was going on, that's above and beyond.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't give them a 5% raise for that. I can't, you know, but, you know, a little pat on the back. The lieutenant and I discussed it earlier today. You know, my staff really, because you know what, sometimes people call the police department and the dispatchers are short with them because there's so much going on. There's only 2 people there answering the phone. And you can't stay on the phone with people, but when you have downtime and you can call people back because they were maintaining a list, to me, that's outstanding.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's just one example.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the benefit of being last is that all the questions have been answered that I had written down. So I will say the procedure is very good. And I was very happy to see that there's more positive discipline measures than there are negative. And I think that's important for building the police force, keeping people here that we have here, instead of just hustling them out the door with, you know, 1 or 2 little infractions. So, yeah, I don't really have anything else. I know we're behind, so I'll keep it short.
Thank you.
Okay, any brief, or any other questions from the board?
I had one quick one. You talked about sharing data without sharing names. Officers wear the cameras to record what happens. Would those ever be available to get a better understanding of what was going on, or would they risk violation of policy?
So with that, that's going to be the investigator's responsibility. And the investigator will prepare that document. For example, with use of force is a great example. When those come all the way to my desk, I actually have that DVD and I can put it in my computer and I can watch that. You're going to get a general synopsis. If there's something that you don't understand, I think we would bridge that when we get to that, more than likely in executive session. That's a really great question, Marsh. I haven't really thought that far ahead, but right now it's set up so that you would get the synopsis of what happened and if there was discipline or not, and not what that was. But I think we understand that from the training with Ms. Bent. But that's a good question. Let's see what happens as we progress. There's a lot of things here that are new to us, and I want to do this right. I want to do this right, and I know Lieutenant Grandy wants to do it right. But that's if there's not a clear understanding, I guess we would look at software where we could. Perhaps do that, but let's see how it goes.
Yep, good.
Trial and error.
Can always be amended.
Right, absolutely.
So, all right. Any questions from the public? Tortoise, if you can just go up and state your name for Cat TV in your town, please.
Sure. Tortoise Isselhart from Bennington. It's a question about the Guardian system, because I remember when you talked about it first last fall, that you said that you were working out with them what you'd be tracking. And I wondered if there is some kind of a matrix or a list of what it is that you track that you can share with CPARB to make sure that the things that they want tracked are in there and what they can expect.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Hi, Lieutenant Grandy. I think I can answer your question in part. Sharing information from the Guardian tracking system, you got to remember, it's a personnel manual. But the categories, they do vary. They talk about use of force, pursuits, policies, their early intervention tools, and there's also merit. So if an employee does something positive or gets some type of accolade, that goes into the system as well. But, it has the ability to track use of force, how many times an officer is involved in a pursuit, mental health, policy review. There's several, I'm just trying to vision it through my head, but there's a lot of topics within that system.
There's a grading system, like a merit, a little merit, lots of merit, or a little worse, lots of worse?
No, there's not a merit system involved in it. It's just, it's a flagging system. So what happens is that each category gets has a flag. So if an officer or a member gets to that, whatever that flag, let's say they have 3 use of force reports in a month, that flag comes to administration, and then we need to look at that information. So when then we go back and look at all 3 use of forces and see if there's a reason why one individual officer had a use of force 3 times in a month.
Yep, thank you. Well, if there are no other questions, we thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So I just want to be clear that you're okay with this, and now I can share this with the union personnel
Yes, do we need
and
to?
put it in place.
So I have to ask for clarification. Do we do a motion? Because this is not anything that we have real input on. I mean, if we said, no, we're not, you need to change it.
If you don't have objection, you can say you don't have objection.
No objection?
I have
No objection.
Okay.
Okay.
We did fix the IE and make it an EG.
There you go.
And
I
on the
appreciate
right
that
path.
more than you know.
And I appreciate it. I'm a police chief. I was not an English major. I majored in criminal justice.
And I got to tell you, neither am I, and I'm very thankful for other people on the board who can point that stuff out, because my grammar is the never-ending sentence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have Brian Corr from Cambridge Consulting Services Group, who is going to do some training for us. And the topic that we're going to be talking about this evening is our upcoming listening session. So Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can, and hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
I was listening the whole time, but I didn't keep my camera off just because my head was so big and I didn't want to distract from the chief. And I do first just want to take a moment to also acknowledge all of the work of public safety and utilities people up there. I sort of made a little statement at the beginning that in Cambridge we thought we were going to get a foot of snow, and we actually only got rain. So I can't imagine people up there are going through. So just wanted to mention that. And then I really want us to be able to spend some time together thinking of this training as more kind of workshopping what we need to do together in order to figure out this new community listening session. It's scheduled for Saturday, June 24th. In some ways, it feels very far off from the summer, and in other ways, it'll be here before people know it. So I think we did have a good discussion about that when we were at the retreat a few weeks ago. And really, I want to make sure, I believe that you share with people just sort of the notes that we put together, so people have that. And I am going to spend a little time walking through that, but I also want to make sure that at the end of this, it's not just a discussion kind of about how to do things, but that there's a pretty clear set of things that people agree on, people want to get out of this, and that we can move forward on. So again, it's a community listening session. The other thing I should just mention quickly is that I don't know if people are aware that there's another process going on, people may, that around some accountability forums or accountability forum for the Bennington community, and it's being organized primarily by Jonathan Phipps from the supervisory union, Southern Vermont Supervisory Union, and there will be some natural overlap because the goal of that is to help people in the community know how they can sort of find ways to address issues of discrimination, where they feel there needs to be some accountability. So that process is ongoing, and that will involve people from the town, from the schools, and the town people include the police department. So I mention that because when we talk about outreach, I think what people are thinking is sort of a shared outreach strategy that helps get people to both of these things. So that's sort of my broad introduction. In terms of the listening session, when we met last, there were a lot of different things that people were thinking about that could be important to do in this session. And in that write-up that I did with Kelly, as some ideas to share with that group and to bring before you, I think the first thing is really to figure out what is the purpose and the broad goal. I think my tendency, and I think a lot of us, is to think about how we're going to do things and get into details and strategies and tactics, but often it's really important to kind of step back and think about what's the big picture, what are we trying to achieve? And often, well, we all know, but it's really good to be clear about that, stated, so that we're all on the same page, or as much as we can be. And then to make sure that there is agreement on that. Once that is pretty clear, we can spend some time kind of going through these separate sections of this framework, and then really talking about how we get things done. What are the outstanding questions? What are next steps? Certain things are obviously like outreach and like that, but really just making sure that at the end of our time together tonight, there's more of a sense of shared purpose, more clarity about what we want to get out of this, and then how it's actually going to happen, both in terms of implementation and what would happen during this session. So let me pause very briefly and ask you some clarifying questions about my introduction, and then I'll plow forward. They're done.
Brian, when we get to the point where we start talking more about the details, can you share, is it possible for you to share your screen at all? And show that outline?
Do I have the ability?
You may not. I just didn't know, it might be easier for them to see it. Okay.
Okay, I thought about that and I thought, but maybe not make it work.
And I emailed it to everybody, but I don't think I printed it for them.
And who is the host? Is it Jonah, who I think has left?
Yeah.
Jonah, yeah. So anyway, we'll just go through it without it. I was just trying to put it up for people to read, so my apologies.
Yeah, no. It's okay. We'll do okay. So the first item on that list was the purpose or goals. And what we came up with was a broad purpose and 3 goals underneath that. So the first thing in the purpose is to introduce CPARB to the broader community and to establish the relationship, the relationship between CPARB and the Bennington community. And to achieve that purpose, the 3 goals would be to create a positive first impression, to ensure that attendees feel listened to and heard, and to set the stage for future work of CPARB with the community. So let me just start with that, right? Because again, we can start talking about structure and how it's going to work, but I think if we can start with the purpose and goals, that will really ground us well. So I really just want to open it up. What are people's reactions to introducing CPARB to the broader community and establishing a relationship by creating a positive first impression, ensuring attendees feel listened to and heard, and setting the stage for future work?
Sounds great.
I think it sounds like it pretty much encompasses some of the stuff that we talked about during our retreat. So any other comments, Robert, Marsh?
A couple. I wrote down two things that stood out to me, and the first one was being heard. I think if we're looking at all the stuff on community policing, one of the real things that helps people to respect the police is knowing that they're really hearing you when you're talking to them. So your leadership and guidance for what procedures we might use to make sure people feel heard seem very important to me too. Second is, in terms of group process, there are the 5 pieces that you're probably familiar with: forming, storming, norming, performing, and leaving. And the big part about forming is that people feel like they belong there. And I know you love to do icebreakers or things that get people sensing they belong. And I'm hoping some effort at making sure everybody there feels like they belong is a part of the process.
Okay, great. And I appreciate that. And I will say that those sort of details we can talk about when we get to more of the structure. But
Yep.
but it's definitely important how they're connected to these broader goals.
Yep.
Well,
Nope, I don't have anything. Sorry, I'm just looking for something.
Scott?
We're good?
Okay, it would be so much better if I were there in person.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, this is good, because I think this is actually a big thing. And this time I may guide us back to those points if we start to do what maybe seems to be like strength. But, I'm here to help, really. So the next piece on that list of things is the outcome. And so the outcome, and this is a little wordy, but the outcome is to identify possible collaborative action items that will help to create a trusting connection between the community and BPD, right? So the purpose is really about CPARB and introducing, letting people know who CPARB is, but the outcome, right, it's not really about CPARB, it's about the broader sets of things that can happen to create a trusting connection between the community and the Bennington Police Department. Right? So that's a little abstract, but I think as people think about what happens in this, what kind of conversations, who's being really encouraged to come to the table, it is keeping that big picture in mind, because it's not just about CPARB for CPARB's sake, right? But it's about the broader purpose that CPARB is here for. And that needs to be part of thinking about what the outcome looks like. Again, I'm going to pause for questions. This is, again, more sort of framing questions, comments, thoughts about that.
Yeah, Brian?
Robert?
Brian, yeah. I don't know if this fits in right now or whatever, but when you were talking, this is what I thought of. It would be, I'd be interested if we could find out from a group like this what they expect from CPARB, what they're hoping that we would be able to bring about. We're always thinking of, we should do this, we should do that. I'd love to know what people would like from us, what they would like to see us doing. And specifically at the listening session, I'd like to find out what people would like to see as a result of the listening session. Why are you here? What would make you think that this was successful and useful? What do you want? Are they coming expecting that, if they complain about something, it's going to get changed? Are they expecting us to communicate back to the community about, our findings? What do people want from the listening session itself? So those are two things I'd like to find out.
I think that we have that also covered and partly in setting the stage for our future work.
Okay.
Because that's,
Right.
Hopefully we'll be able to get some input and direction,
Feedback,
you know,
right.
and feedback from them,
That'd
so.
be great.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that's right, though. And I certainly think that as a session goes on, having those kinds of questions as part of the prompt. Oh, look, I'm the host now.
Oh my God.
That means that I can't take notes on the same but that's okay.
But you can screen share.
All right, so now I'm now shifting to screen sharing mode. Okay, let's see. All right, looks like you should be able to see.
Yeah, we have it, thank you.
That.
Yeah.
I will just say that now you guys are super tiny.
So are you.
But I can still hear you, so, and again, it's.
Well, maybe
important, so
we can just keep it up for a few minutes and then.
Blue underlines, that's where things, my grammar is incorrect, so, anyway, so we are here, in this part of the discussion. So, as we think about this, it sounds like so far everybody's on the same page, which is great. So we're good with the goals, we're good with the outcome, all right? So I think this is really where we'll probably spend most of our time in this section, the structure. So I guess this is, so probably, I wish I could see what you could see. So I assume that most of what you can see is this, this set of words here. So these are the things, based on our conversation at our last session, that seemed like the right things. These are things that came up. I'm sure more things will come up, and this is where I'm trying to take some notes. So you will get to see my process in real time as I add things to this document. So some of this is sort of obvious, right? So there's some sort of welcome. Someone helps set norms. I think we've been talking about my facilitating, so that's something I'm very comfortable doing, and many of you have already experienced. I work to do it in a way that doesn't feel like giving people rules, but in some ways that's actually the first place when you have a public session to include people, is just to not agree, like give people an opportunity to share if there are any other norms or community agreements or meeting agreements, is probably a better way to say it, that people would like to see. So that kind of opens the time together, tells people what we expect to do, thanks them for being there, and then gives them kind of a container for what we want to do and how we want to do it together. And I'm just going to pause because I'm not in the room, and that's it. You're super tiny. So I'm going to pause after each point and see if there are questions, comments, discussion.
Any questions from the board?
No.
For what, the first?
On the structure that he's talking about as far as like the welcome and session norms and background on CPARB questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I do farther down, but not yet.
Yeah, so no, I'm going kind of slow. So it sounds like no one has questions about the welcome and the session norms. So then there's background and information on CPARB. I would imagine that would be one or more people from CPARB. And, that could be something where, depending on how it's structured, I mean, there are different ways to do it. You could have Kelly as chair, you could have an individual once who is selected to do it. You could have, all the members participate just in small segments, right now, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes each. Someone could talk about, here's how we started. Someone could say, here's what we do. The members obviously are there to introduce themselves. And when I put work plan, I think that's sort of a shorthand for a quick way to give people a sense of what work is on your plate. Again, it wouldn't be a comprehensive reporting out to the community for 15 minutes with slides, but just a general sense of what you actually have been doing and are working on. And I'm pausing again for feedback, comments, thoughts, questions.
I like the idea, but I think that it should be all of us, not just the chair or vice, or maybe one person taking the lead if it's a presentation type thing. But I really think when it comes to the introduction, it should be, every member of the board should be doing their own brief introduction on that. That's what I would like to see, not just up to me, ask the rest of you, but.
So are you talking about introducing the board, or are you talking about each person should have a really quick introduction of who they are?
Well, I think when you're talking about, CPARB, we're the board, but I think that they need to know the different people in the board. I mean, so that would be my thing. Yes, this is CPARB, this is our introduction, but this is Robert and Marsh and Will and Jeff and Scott. And just a brief thing, very similar to what we did at our first meeting, but just something like that. That's what I think.
A brief introduction.
Do you know if we will be the only members of the board? Because they can fill another 2 seats on the board, correct, in June?
Not this June.
Not this June.
No, I think that starts
I think
next
it's
June.
1 seat.
Are they going to fill it?
We're accepting applications.
Okay. Yep. So it might be 7. Well, I don't know how quickly.
We will be once the new board is seated.
Yeah, there will be.
We're on the board.
Yeah, so possibly.
Yeah.
What was June 24th? Okay. Any other questions on this one? Comments?
So I actually have a question. What I've highlighted is, because I wasn't sure for exactly what you were saying, I think you learned that, but maybe this is my idea. Can each member play a role in presenting those topics, separate from introducing themselves?
You broke up a little. Could
It's like,
yeah, each member can, yeah, absolutely.
But it's also a chance for everybody to
Yep.
say something, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So everyone should know that they will be asked to have a role. Okay. All right.
I think we all
so
thought that
that's
anyway.
Great. Next is questions. So that would really be a chance for people to ask questions of the board, right? You know, and again, you want to, and that's the facilitator's job. You probably want it to be an endless, open-ended thing. But if you, after you present, you want to again encourage this sense that this is interactive. You want to hear from people. So the thought would be that then there's a chance for people in the audience to ask, or the attendees, however you want to put it. Maybe attendees is probably a better way to think about an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the questions get answered. So that will probably be, there's never enough preparation we can do for that. I think, again, you know, it's probably on the facilitator to kind of manage that, but then it's also up to the members to both step up and answer things in a way that is appropriate, speaks for everybody, but also not take up too much time, because it can be easy to, again, for all of us, I think, but I know myself, to talk, to want to explain everything and get into details and make sure people understand the nuances. And this would really be just sort of a Q&A, right? So not a, 45-minute session about questions, about everything, but just, you've just presented on what CPARB is, why it exists, people may have questions about that. Okay, I don't want to keep saying after every time, any questions, thoughts, or concerns, but any questions, thoughts, or concerns?
The only concern I have really is making sure we have enough, I don't want to say questions, but, we've talked about different, and this is definitely details, but different ways to get questions, whether we have index cards and fish bowls, or, somebody who wants to come up and ask one, but different ways to get questions from people there that may not be comfortable going up and saying the question out loud. So, but
Great
that's
idea.
probably a detail.
Yeah, I think it's good.
But I do like the questions. What do you think community policing is? What have been your personal experiences? What would you like to see? I don't know if I jumped ahead. If I did, I'm sorry. But
Yeah, no, it's okay, because, well, I guess before we do jump there, did anyone have any other thoughts about the sort of general Q&A part for attendees?
I just like Kelly's idea of making different ways for people to participate, because a lot of people are shy and just standing up in front of 30 people and asking a question, just like, shoot me first.
that's why I think it's important that every member of the board is involved in the introduction and presentation part.
Yeah, and I think Kelly's mentioned to me a couple times the idea of, a fishbowl or something where people write on little cards and someone collects those and brings them up. And then if someone has a question but just doesn't want to go up to the mic and say it in front of everybody, or maybe he just doesn't want to be identified with the question, then those questions can be read out and addressed. And that's true throughout. So, okay. So this goes a little bit to not everything that Robert mentioned, but it's in that field about having people share their thoughts. So part of this is that we've all been to community meetings where there's a whole bunch of people waiting in line and they want to speak their mind and they can't wait and they really want that opportunity. And there's other community meetings where people kind of sit there, and so it's hard to know what to expect. But I think in both of those types of settings and things in between, it can be really helpful for there to be some prompts. And these aren't to tell people these are the only things that you can share ideas about, but to help frame things so that people have a point to start with. And also, it gives people a sense of what CPARB and the members of CPARB think could be helpful. So, asking people, what do you think it's important for us to know and understand, etc. And some of these are possible questions, or it could be more, but what do you think community policing is? What does that mean to you? What have been your personal experiences with the police? And that's, again, in a sense, you think that could draw a ton out, or people are afraid to say something, but hopefully, again, there are multiple ways for people to share that. That's a way for people to share that information with you and to be heard. And then, what would you like to see? And that's a really open-ended question. So perhaps it's there's what would you like to see, from CPARB, from BPD, from the town, just to help people think a little more broadly, or more narrowly if it's too broad for people.
I think something related to that is I read a couple of articles on surveys and questionnaires, and there were two different kinds of information they saw. One was people's feelings about policing, and trying to get a pulse for how folks felt about the BPD and why. And the other is people's experiences, which you just talked about a couple of minutes ago, and what made them positive or negative for the person. And the third thing that both of these articles suggested was asking if you could have one small thing happen that would make things better, what might it be? And then for us, our job would be, of course, to do it or to take it seriously. But that starts the ball rolling for people to feel like they can give a task that's not too overwhelming and that something will actually happen once they share those.
I'm sorry, could you, I was listening to it and I had it in my mind. So that last one was, what would you like to see happen?
What's one small thing that we could do that would make this better? The board, the police department, the town of Bennington. And then the second part of that is on us, which is working to make that small thing happen so people can see their input really has an effect.
Yeah. So I know it's interesting. So I'm just going to reflect, and then people have other thoughts. That's great. I think that it's a great question, and it could be challenging in this format because CPARB is relatively new, especially if people are thinking about a range of issues. And when you ask for one small thing, what if it's a thing that you can't do, or it turns out it's not a very good idea?
Right.
I guess I see a bit of a challenge in that it could set you up for people saying, we asked you to do this, and it was a small thing, and you didn't do it. And then it's also not going to happen in this session. So
no, it certainly won't.
It could be challenging for people to know that's happening. So I'm just, again, this is initial reflection. It might be something that happens a little later or in different formats. But that's just my first thought. That's not some definitive answer. I would love to hear what other people think about asking people for like a specific change or small thing they'd like to see happen.
I agree. I just think that the possibility of it being something outside of our scope that we really can't do, and I would hate for somebody to leave with a false hope.
Right.
If it was, an expectation that they had that we didn't meet. So it would just be, if it was something, it would have to be worded in such a place that, in a way that it was something that we could
I think that would be very
do,
important, yeah.
on that, so. That's the only thing that I had, my concern. Anyone else?
No, I agree.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything. This is an odd thing, I'm taking notes, and you can see me taking notes.
I think it would need to be.
The world that we live in. Okay, so it sounds like we're pretty good with the 3 prompts. There's this conversation about one small thing. I mean, give it some thought. But so far, 2 of us are like, one person thinks it's good. So it's out there, but not necessarily on the list quite yet. So this is one thing that we discussed previously, was this idea of breaking up into small groups. And I guess that second part, parentheses, if it seems helpful and there's a way to ensure people will feel able to share and listen in a respectful environment. So I have tons of experience facilitating groups and small groups and meetings and public forums. I don't have a ton of experience with public meetings in Bennington. I did attend a meeting of the select board, almost 2 years ago, sort of introducing the idea of civilian oversight from this outside perspective. And that was interesting, and it was okay, but that's really my experience with a public community meeting in Bennington. And that was pretty formal and structured in terms of my role and the presentations and the purpose. So this is really where I hope that all of you will engage in the conversation, and I will listen and maybe pipe in a little bit. But so what do you think about this idea of breaking into small groups, just separate from the benefits of it? Because I have said, there are clear benefits to people being able to talk and feel they can speak and be heard, they're not intimidated by a large group. And there's obvious pitfalls if you have a small group that gets dominated by 1 or 2 people, especially people who have maybe contrary opinions, or think it's an opportunity to lecture people or explain to people why they don't know what's right or what they need to know. So, yeah, I'm going to step back hopefully, and I want to kick this off, so people please share your thoughts about pros and cons of small groups, and if it would be helpful or if it might be less than helpful, more likely.
Scott?
My first question is, do we have a location set yet?
No.
Because I think geographics are going to play a huge part in being able to break into small groups. If we're at the auditorium at the high school, how do you then take people sitting in the seats looking at the stage area and break them into small groups? My concern is by breaking into small groups, you're not actually addressing the full board, and you're not getting feedback from the full board. You're getting feedback from an individual or a couple of individuals, not the representation of everybody. So those are my 2 concerns. I think it would be easier for people to talk if it were in a small group setting. I think that would put the people that we're dealing with at ease. But again, we have to look at, where are we going to be having this session? Are they able to facilitate breaking into small groups? And then how do we really handle that? Because again, they're not addressing the board, they're addressing either one person or 2 people. And my feelings may not be the same as Robert's. So the feedback that I'm going to be giving is not going to be the same that they would get from other people. So just a couple concerns.
Jeff?
Yeah, I was thinking, not that it's a negative necessarily, but that if we were in small groups, we would all have a different experience. Each group would be totally different, I would imagine. Maybe there are some similarities. So how would you capture what each group discussed and the points from that, then to bring back to the larger group, if that's possible, or maybe those negatives outweigh the positives? I guess there's both ways. But when you say small group, what does that mean to you, number-wise? No, Brian?
I think you were asking me. I think it depends, right? I'm planning a thing for my job 2 weeks from today, and we have no idea how many people are going to show up. So we're planning on 4 groups and recognizing that those 4, because that's how many facilitators we'll have. And those 4 groups might be 3 people, or they might be 20 people.
Okay.
We just have to be flexible. So, I mean, depending on how many people, depending on what the format is and what the structure is, this event I'm planning at work is focused on a discussion about race and the fact that race is not biologically real, but it has real social consequences. And so, it's, I'd say not that policing can't be, but it's an inherently pretty broad topic. And I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where people have strong opinions. So, in that case, what we're really focused on is who's going to facilitate those sessions. Do they have the wherewithal, the kind of ability to manage groups however they turn out? If it's something that's not quite as strong, I would think this is not the same to the same degree, I would hope. Although I understand there are real issues, and many people are very passionate, and some people are very upset about the things that have happened or are happening. I would guess that this is more about having groups of a size that is manageable than having groups based on how many facilitators you can have.
Yeah, so smaller.
Those are both factors. So
Small.
that's not really an answer. It's more, here's what you have to consider.
Yep, okay.
My feeling, when they say groups, would be like 2 or 4 people.
Right.
Or 1 or 2 CPARB members. That's a small group.
Can I weigh in on this? Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, okay. I think it's essential that this format includes small groups. I think that's the only way we're going to get as much participation as we can in this entire thing. The way I perceive it is not breaking into small groups, and we need a location that will facilitate this, obviously. But when you walk into the room, the way I envision it, you would have like 6 circles of chairs already established, and at each circle you would have a member of the CPARB Board. People would come in, they'd find what seats they want. The groups would form on their own. This gives each CPARB Board member as a facilitator opportunity to start talking to the group, hearing from the group, getting people comfortable. Then, at the front of the room where you're going to have your presentation, you have whatever presentations we've planned. Then you can have people stand up and speak their thoughts to the group at large, give them, put a microphone in front of them, do all of that. Then turn your attention back into the small groups, which each CPARB member as a facilitator. We've come up with some list of questions to guide the discussion and to get input from people, and then let people talk in a more intimate environment. I think that would work. So that's kind of my vision for this. But you form the groups as they come in. You don't try to form groups from a big group of people. You let them form naturally from the very beginning. So that's how I would do it if I was setting it up.
See, now, my vision, if we're going to do small groups, is somewhat similar. I'm not so sure on letting people form their own groups, because I think getting different people together, because, you know, everybody's going to want to go sit with you. Nobody's going to want to come and sit with me. But I do think, and from somebody doing, and I don't do, this is my first listening session. I've done a lot of education training and seminars and things like that I've been on the, you know, organizing committees on. And maybe it's something that we do go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 to break it up. The benefit I see to the small groups is it does make it easier if someone is a little bit intimidated to get up in a large group. That small group might be easier, and it also might give them a little encouragement after to speak up at the big group.
Yeah.
But I do agree, location is going to be key. You know, the numbers of will play into it, because if only 5 people come, it's not going to work to have 6 groups. You know, so we kind of have to plan and be flexible for you know, what's going to happen day of, and keep that in mind. But the benefit I see is just more personalization and interaction, and I think it makes us a little bit more accessible. So that would be my thought.
One of the questions, I can't remember which of you shared it, but was finding out what the different groups thought about things. And a lot of times, when small groups are set up, somebody is asked to be the recorder, so that not only the facilitator would be a member of our group, would be paying attention to what they hear, but somebody else would be jotting down the ideas that were coming up.
And so I feel like there's, maybe, I can't really, it's like little tiny people. I know I haven't heard from Will, maybe, I'm not sure if everybody else has weighed in, but we'd love to hear everybody's thoughts, and then I'll try to, I won't say recap, but keep us moving in this discussion. But if you have something to add, Will, or anyone else who hasn't spoken.
I have nothing to comment on about this right now, something else, and I'll bring that up in a moment, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Did everybody else get a chance to weigh in? Maybe Jeff? Did I hear Jeff's voice in there?
Yes.
Yes, in what way?
Yeah, I
He's
commented. I think that I was the one asking about what size is a small group and how it would be a different experience for each person or each group.
So Kelly, I have one more question too. Have we started promoting this session at all? Because we're coming toward the latter half of March, and June will be here just like that. So that's another thing. The sooner we get the word out, we get a location, get the word out, the more people we'll probably get. But if we start advertising this on June 15th, we're going to get, you know,
So, yeah.
us and 3 other people.
This is a little off topic, but my understanding, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that Jonathan Phipps is working on the accountability forum, and that will be 2 institutions. It will be the SVSU, and I think the town. So everything is still being worked out. Once that's all finalized, there's going to be publicity for both events coming out. So they're waiting for that. There's trying to get the facilitator, I think, the schedule down. They're looking at possibly a date in May. And then once, like I said, once they have that, then they're going to start publicizing both events at the same time. And that hopefully will come out in the next week or so, you think?
I hope.
I hope.
Yeah,
I hope,
think
but
so.
we will start.
Looking
We will
at
start with
the
Jonah
last
getting the data.
Today. It doesn't have a specific time to get that out, but I know they're looking.
I know he's working on it.
The 23rd or
Yeah.
30th, a Tuesday at 6 p.m.
And I hope I didn't steal his thunder. If I did, I apologize.
People. But yeah, so that will be, you know, at least 3 weeks, if not, 5 weeks before the CPARB listening session.
So we have, and for what it's worth, if there's a meeting I've been going to, I've also been mentioning it, just trying to get the word out, and I encourage everybody else to do the same thing. But we do need to get a location, and then we will start with the,
Yeah.
and a time. I don't think we determined a time either.
Well, that is a good thing that we should get into when we get there. So, I mean, just to come back to this, I'm hearing some general sense of small groups can be useful, some concerns about either, how you do them, or a concern about not doing them at all. I do think that some of the things that people talk about capturing out of those small groups might actually come more easily in different types of outreach and conversations with people. But it sounds like there's still not consensus, and I know people don't necessarily work by consensus, but if we had, and it sounds like it's a little bit dependent on location, so it might be that if a location is secured that, has a big room and a bunch of smaller rooms that people can easily go into, that's great. If it's a school auditorium, maybe not so good. So I guess,
Brian, I have a question. This is a 4-hour listening session? Is that correct?
I don't know that we decided.
I thought that's what was in the proposal. It was a 4-hour.
I was thinking 2 to 3 hours.
Okay, because 4 hours without any, breaking into small groups or just sitting there is really challenging.
Pretty long.
Yeah, that's a long time.
2 hours.
So, okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. That's why I love doing everything all at once. It's the story of my life. Okay, so I do feel like it would be important to come to a little clarity pretty soon about the small groups. Not because that's so vital for all the little details, but you probably, when we start doing outreach, you want to let people know what the general structure will be, and if there's going to be, if it's just that everybody's in the room, there's a presentation, people speak and bring up cards, and then that's it, versus then there's going to be a breaking up smaller groups. I think that sort of changes how you do, not how you do the outreach, but what you say to people. So we can come back to that, but I just want to note that I do think that's a fairly important decision point. And I'm not necessarily hearing that people are all in one spot yet. So hopefully we can check back in on that. And then the last portion, let me put this all down here. The last portion of this, as Tony and I came up with, was this idea of reflecting back to the attendees what CPARB heard and stating what CPARB will be doing after the event, right? So this is kind of a closing. So that could be, again, with this uncertainty about small groups, it could be after the big session and small groups, or it could just be after one big session at the end. So, there's different ways to reflect that. One with small groups is report outs, which is, I'm personally not the world's largest fan of report outs from small groups. I feel like they're necessary and they're often not that interesting. But sometimes they're really great. So that's a natural way to bring that feedback back. But then also, I think it will be important for both the facilitator and members of the board to in some way be able to share, again, not in great detail. It's not like taking notes and writing paragraphs about what people said, but being able to listen and have summarize themes and concerns generally, not specific, but and to really do that based on what people have talked about. Because I will say, again, talking about myself, and probably true for others, it's easy for me to kind of come in knowing what I expect people to say, and then that's what I listen for, and then I tell people, well, what I heard you say was exactly what I thought you were going to say, because I heard you say it, I remember. So just being thoughtful about really doing active listening, right, and making sure that you're not listening for what you think are the problems or for what people want to say, but listening to what people are actually saying who are speaking in that forum. And even if those things don't reflect how most people feel, in some way, as long as it's not obnoxious or painful or dangerous or wrong at some deeper level, it's important to reflect those things back. So I'm going to stop lecturing to see any thoughts, comments, reflections on my talk about reflecting back.
It fully agrees with what I think is important for people who come to this, that they get a sense that we've really heard them. And the one way that I know that you've heard me is if you say back to me what I've said in a way that I get it. So I think that's great.
So what I'm hearing you say, Marsh, is that you find that people are really listening to you. They're able to say back to you, like, wow, I was really struck by it when you talked about how you have this experience of people repeating back to you what you said because you know they really heard you.
A+ for your listening skills.
I'm trying to make some people have fun. No, but thank you, Marshall. But yeah, so, I knew Marshall like that. But I came in knowing Marshall like that. So no, in all seriousness, other thoughts? Does that, Joy, sound good? Are there other things people are thinking about the wrap-up? Because, part is the listening, but then part is also letting people know what you're going to be doing after that session.
I think it's an important part. I think it's going to happen throughout the whole listening session, just as part of conversation. But I think that reflecting back at the end is going to be important. And expectations for follow-up.
Both for follow-up, and there may be expectations of what's happening. For example, we may not have talked about an actual complaint or an actual compliment, and that might be one of the things. And stay tuned for the next month, because we have the chief coming in with a situation where we're going to try out for the first time doing this kind of stuff. Yeah. Or something similar, whatever we might see.
Okay.
Well, and Brian,
Yeah.
I think, are we on follow-up or did we go back? I thought we were on.
No, we're I'm sorry, I started timing up.
Oh, okay.
We're in the last thing before follow-up.
Yeah. I think part of follow-up, one, we generate maybe some kind of report or summary of the event, and we have that available on the webpage. But I think part of the follow-up is if people see us in our monthly meetings discussing the things we heard at this session and talking about recommendations we could make or, training, they see us using what we heard. Again, we're not over-promising. We're not saying whatever you think needs to be changed is going to be changed. But if they see us in our normal course of business talking about what we learned and acting on it, that should be pretty good follow-up, I think.
Yeah. All right. So, well, unless someone wants to say something else about reflecting, we're kind of naturally moving into the follow-up section. In some ways, what you just said, Robert, I think it's kind of that first bullet point. And maybe it's more than just the next regular meeting, but definitely at that meeting, being able to report back. Because again, I think in two ways. There's exactly what you said about people knowing that, it's back to this idea of being heard, but also that's a session CPARB is doing, and then in your public meeting, which is your official meeting, you do want to talk about that and report on it. And in my little system here, is I'm writing, putting in brackets things I'm adding now, so I can keep track. But maybe there is some sort of written summary or report in addition to discussions at the meeting. But into incorporating those things into CPARB's work plan, using the experience to inform future outreach and community engagement efforts. Those aren't specifics. Those are kind of areas of work, things that you would need to do. But really, I guess let's just stay with this follow-up piece. What else? Maybe this encapsulates everything you would need to do. But in terms of follow-up, what are people thinking? What else might need to be done, or what would be most important, or maybe one of these doesn't seem really possible. Open for.
I think that the summarizing at the next CPARB meeting is critical, you know, for people that didn't go. I don't know about an action plan. It would depend. It's really kind of a hard question, Brian, because you really have to see what you get for information before you can say, you know, we'll definitely do this. I mean, I think the commitment definitely needs to be that there'll be a discussion at the next meeting and, you know, what we heard and, you know, what within our scope we can look at. There might be some new training idea or something that comes up.
Okay, so.
But it's just hard to say what you're going to follow up on if you don't know exactly what's coming out, because what you think you might hear might be totally different than what you are going to hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think the key to me is just that commitment to follow up, you know, to take seriously what we hear and then structurally plan for integrating it, whatever it is.
And also not, you know, at our meetings afterwards, we could use the opportunity to invite the chief up and say, you know, here, you know, someone said this in my group, and he could say, oh, that we didn't think of that, that's a good point, or he could explain police procedures, well, this is why we do this, you know, and kind of have a question and answer with the chief based on some of the comments and the questions we've gotten from the listening session, and give the police an opportunity to say, well, this is why we do this, you know.
I would hope to give the police the opportunity to do that possibly during the listening session, because I think if somebody has a question and you can answer that on the spot for them and help clarify, I think that's powerful.
That could be part of it, but the only ones who would hear that really are the people there. This way,
yeah,
we
but
have
if you're
our
gonna,
vast audience.
if you summarize afterwards and we follow up, I think it would be. I think it probably both.
Yeah, yes. I think it'd be dynamic to have the police chief be able to come up here and talk. You know, we say, well, someone said this. Well, this is why we do this, and I think that'd be a great opportunity to help communicate with the community. It's what the police do.
I think it would also be a good opportunity to look at certain things like that, if there is something, and we could get chief or lieutenant or one of their other designees up to do some community education on why we do it this way and why the policies are on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Other thoughts about follow-up?
I think it has to be continuous. It can't be just a one and done thing. It can't be something where we're going to say, okay, here's our July meeting and then we're done. Right. It's going to be carried on into, you know, into future meetings. And depending on what it is, it might be something with quarterly updates, or, you know, depends.
I think whatever we find in these meetings, well, in the listening session, would have to be added to agenda items going forward. We're not going to be able to tackle everything in July. Depending on how many people show up and how many comments we get, how much feedback we get, and what's stated, we'll definitely have to break that out and work on that over time.
I'm also hoping we might get some ideas for our survey questions for the town survey in September.
Okay. Good. Let's see. Okay. So next steps. High outreach. Next steps for planning. I think we've actually done the first one. I thought that might be more challenging. I think we've reached broad consensus about the goal. The timeline still needs to happen, right? So some of that is not that complicated. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in this session, trying to group workshop a timeline, but really being able to, be clear about when things are going to happen, when's the outreach going to launch. And I recognize it's a little complicated because of this overlap with the SVSU accountability forum in May. But I think we still can do some work to think, like, if this thing is on June 24th, when do we need to have publicity out? When do we need to make sure that, anybody who has a role knows what they're doing, that sort of thing. So I don't think it's not a huge deal, but, and we'll get to the kind of outreach in a second. Probably I guess, let's just get to the outreach. This is probably really, even without going to the venue, something that can start to happen. Beginning outreach to the community in general, but also one of the conversations that's come up is who are the key stakeholders, so that date, which is now set, I believe, it's set in my calendar, June 24th, that's Saturday. Again, you have to be able to say enough to people with the save the date that they know what to expect. They realize they're not going to get the entire agenda, but save the date. CPARB will be having its first community listening session, community engagement event on Saturday, June 24th, from time to time. That time hasn't been set yet, and put that there. But deciding the time of day. And we might try to do that now. I'll just say, I recognize, I know it's 8:04 and I'm not the last thing on the agenda, so I'm trying to move a little more quickly. And so, I'm going to jump ahead because I think this may help a bit. So, talking about outreach, now I borrowed this from this other conversation about the May event. But, so this might not be exactly the right set of things, but it seemed to be some various groups that probably would be important to reach out to. I think Cat TV, maybe that's more for covering, I'm not certain. I'm not going to read through this whole list, but I think a lot of these would be groups that might have people that are considered vulnerable, might have people who have more interactions with the police, might have people they work with who don't have their voices heard as much. And, certainly it's not a list of only activist organizations, but, but people who are in contact with parts of the community, and perhaps especially people, parts of the community where people aren't the ones that come to public sessions and get up at the mic and share their opinion. So I put this here to try to make it a little more real. Again, these groups aren't necessarily partners in planning. It's more, the sense I have about it is that, from what I understand, where these are organizations that might feel their constituents or their staff or their board members would be interested in attending a forum like this, in a session to share experiences, thoughts, ideas about policing, but also learn about CPARB, its work, and provide general information about the CPARB. So I'm going to stop talking again and open it up and see. I lost my window, but you can probably see my window. There we go. Open it up and see what happens. I'm just making it a little bigger so it's all on the screen, hopefully.
Hey, Brian,
Okay.
can you add the Bennington County Coalition for the Homeless to that list?
Oh, they're not on here, that's funny. Okay, thank you. They'll probably go off into another page.
That's the refugee resettlement organization. So are you going to send this to us when you get done in a day or 3 or 10 or?
Well, I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna send the next one because I did this with Kelly. I'm gonna send the next version back to Kelly and
And then I'll send it.
ask her to share it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just say out loud that one of the things that just got for me, I'm trying to kind of send things through Kelly. In fact, during this meeting, I emailed something to her. I have too many moving parts. So not to put a burden on your chair, but if I can kind of work, through the chair to get information out to you and vice versa, that would be very helpful, I think, for everybody.
Yep.
I had a question. Is there a risk of Cat TV being there? Would that maybe make some people uncomfortable that they wouldn't want to be on TV talking?
That's a good point. I'm not sure if you were asking me. Again, I borrowed this list from Jonathan Phipps's list. And, there's something about things being televised and in the world of Zoom. I agree. I mean, I hadn't given it thought because, like I said, I cut and paste this, but I would say that people are different when there are cameras often. So, if people feel different, we should say so. But my inclination is you're right. Cat TV is not necessarily, maybe they're there to help. Maybe they put it on their cable channel if there's an event, but having them be at the event is probably different. Maybe the idea was that they have constituents who would want to come participate. I don't know.
Yeah. Amen. Will had something he was going to tell us sometime. I don't know when that is.
Well, that's kind of past, but it goes back to something that Scott brought up earlier about how we all have different perspectives on how we would want to address something. And I remember from our session, and I hope I can say this out loud, but I specifically wrote down, it says, don't speak as an individual. Now, I'm not too sure if that's exactly what you meant, but I write verbatim when I take notes, and so that's what was said by someone in the group, and we all made a consensus that was how we want to lead that session. So does that still stand?
I will just weigh in. I think that that's important, and it may have been me, whether I've said those words or not exactly. So, but my thought is that you are a board, and yes, you're individuals, you have your individual experiences and perspectives, but you are a body of municipal government. And so, especially in a forum, I think it's important to speak as CPARB and not to say, well, the board, we talked about this, but I don't really agree with those other people. Let me tell you what I think. That's not really the place for that. There are places where one can do that in life, but you sort of take on a role as part of your local government, and it's important to function in that role properly. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I know select board members have to manage that because you're still an individual. In that case, you have to run for election and speak about yourself and your own views, and also function as a member of a multi-member body. No, it's. I'm not sure where I'll put that in my notes, but.
I don't know.
So I'll just share. It's 8:10.
I don't know if you have to write it down.
So I'm happy to keep doing so, but I also want to be mindful of the time you've been here and the time you plan to end.
Also, Brian, real quick, I'm glad that you wrote down all of those different organizations that we could reference and try and reach out to, because I remember we did a little bit of that during the session, but you kind of almost tripled the size of that original list, so that's good. And have you sent that to Kelly yet, or is that something, because I don't remember seeing that. That must be something you've done in the past.
No, that's something I added today. So as I said, I was thinking, I had brainstormed a few groups, and just by kind of thinking about what I about kind of Googling a bit, and then most of this list, up to the last 3 or 4 people, came from Jonathan Phipps. Now, there was some overlap, but I had about 6. And I knew that there were groups like the NAACP and others that had been mentioned. So I was trying to think of who I hadn't heard. So that's why you haven't seen it before. And I don't want to take credit for the whole list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, I just want to add to Brian and everyone else here, it's very difficult in my mind to have a community listening session and shut the media out. It's a community event. You can't stop them from coming in. And if Cat TV wants to be there, the Banner, the Rutland Herald, Channel 13, you can't prevent them from coming into a public place and in covering this. And I do understand that there are some people that may not want to be on television or what have you, but to shut the media out, where's the transparency in the listening session? So please consider that before you shut people out.
Good point.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's my place, but let me respond to that. And I apologize, because I certainly didn't intend it, and I hear about it completely, it would sound like they can't attend. I think my thought was really thinking about something being broadcast, like the way a public meeting is. But again, I take your point very well, and I do think that, right, it's open to the public, media will be there, can't be there, should cover it, and I guess I was thinking more about people feeling like they're in a public meeting where it's being broadcast live or something like that, but your point is very well taken, thank you.
I think we can work around with people if somebody really had a question or a comment and they weren't comfortable going on camera. I think we could find somebody who would be willing to read that question or try to convey their experience discreetly, privately.
That goes back to the fishbowl as well.
Yeah, we'll just have to plan for that in case. Any other questions, comments? Brian, anything?
So I guess a couple outstanding things that maybe, it sounds like people were thinking 2, maybe 3 hours. It probably depends a little bit on the format, if there's smokers or not. If it's a Saturday in Bennington in June, what's a good time of day?
1 to 3.
I don't...
For 1 to 3?
I'm thinking morning, but I also think we need to do food. Or you could do even,
I'm going to have to kind of agree with Robert. I think on a Saturday, most people are not going to wake up too early. But I mean, you're right. We should provide something that way we're there. So I mean, 12 to 2, 1 to 3. I mean, it's in that general time vicinity.
I know in the church business, people often complain about wanting to have weekend days free, and if they're going to do something, to do it at the beginning or the end of the day, so that they don't have the whole day have to be tied up so they're going to go fishing or whatever. Just another thought.
Scott?
To me, mornings on Saturdays are horrible. That's when I get things done. Not everybody does that, but that's, I'm done with work. Saturday morning, I'm getting everything done that I need to get done. So to me, later after lunch seems more reasonable than in the morning.
Jeff?
I can say from my experience in some of these things that morning starts are less well attended.
Less what?
Less well attended. Early afternoon seems to work best, or if it's a weeknight, definitely has to be an evening. But yeah, on a weekend, I would say early afternoon is probably your best shot.
The only problem with a Saturday in June, if it's a nice day, people are coming.
That's right.
And they'll find something to do in the morning, and then they'll be like, yeah, and they'll continue on. If it's a rainy day, great, but I know we can't plan that, but just think about that. I think somebody else said it, Saturdays really are, people's day to get things done. And, listen, there's been a lot of evening sessions that are well attended. It might be, behoove us to think about that, an evening session. If we're going to keep it at 2 hours, 6 to 8, gives people time to get home, have dinner, and come to the listening session. It's just something to think about. Saturdays in June are tough. Graduations, graduation parties,
Weddings.
family functions.
Mm-hmm.
We want to capitalize on this. At least I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 to 8.
Thoughts?
I agree. I hate giving up my weekends.
So here's here's the elephant in the room, if that's appropriate. Does it have to be a Saturday?
You do it.
That's probably more of a Brian scheduling issue, and I don't know if that's an issue with the town. Could we do it on a weeknight instead of during the weekend, or?
I think we could do it whenever we want to. We just have to pick the day, pick the location, set the agenda, and go with it. I would much rather do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night than give up my weekends because I'm busy all week doing work and fire department things and stuff with the board. And I've got my Saturday to get everything done. That's when the dump is open. That's when things happen. And now I'm giving up that opportunity to take care of that little bit of business that I have to do for myself and my family. So I would much rather have it like on a Monday or Tuesday evening. And like the chief said, 6 to 8, 6 to 9. People have had dinner. There's not much going on a Monday night.
Is that a possibility for Brian?
Well, so I'm surprising myself because I'm going to push back a little, but again, this is what I think. A couple things. This isn't about even my schedule. I think that one specific thing is that the SVSU organized event is going to be on a Tuesday night at 6 p.m. So there's a different but somewhat similar event that's going to happen a few weeks before. That's an evening event. And I think my sense is that if you want to have a meeting, if you want to do something like that, that is more something that's a weeknight. People are used to meetings, and we're all people that go to meetings on weeknights. And we're here, and whoever's watching, or whoever's attending, we're people who go to meetings on weeknights. I do think that there are a lot of people, as much as I get it about being hesitant to give up time on the weekend. If you're not like an active person who goes to meetings and events, doing something Saturday afternoon and say, oh, this is kind of different, I'll go do this. I guess it's a question of, is it something for people to say, okay, here's another meeting I have to attend, or is it more, well, there's this thing happening and I'm interested and I'm going to go. So I don't know, and some of this is, I'm articulating my thoughts. I think some of it's just kind of a gut feeling that something like this on a weekend allows people who can't do it during the week, who come home from work, and whether they've got a family or whatever it is, they're not going to rush home and then rush out to a meeting, a community meeting. I feel like there's I guess repeat myself but I keep talking, but I guess it's that difference between people that are community meeting people and people that are not, in my mind. I'll stop with that.
I'm just going to add to what you said, Brian, about pushing back. I feel like we've been talking about the exact date, June 24th, for quite a while, and I just feel like trying to change it now would just be going back to square one. I don't know. That's just my thought.
But it hasn't been advertised anywhere.
Right.
It hasn't been advertised,
so
but
the only place that it's been advertised is with our discussions.
And the select board meeting.
Oh, really?
Select board meeting, okay. I don't know, I think weekends are for food truck festivals and the beach, and you want to talk about community involvement in doing things on Monday or Tuesday night, all of our meetings are at night. The SVSU meeting is going to be in the evening. I'm sure that they did that for a purpose, and they're probably looking at, late May in Vermont, people are starting to now break. We're just coming out of winter, people are going out and doing things. And attending a meeting somewhere on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning probably isn't a high priority.
If I could ask Tom a question real quick. So it's been mentioned at the select board. Do you think there would be a detriment to changing it? Do you think it's gotten out there and it would be a mistake to change it?
It's far enough out right now that, I don't imagine, I think that damage would be minimal.
All right.
But we should decide now so we can send out save the dates and that sort of thing.
Okay. Kelly, do you remember that forum at the at the high school a while back? I forget who it was. What day of the week was that? That wasn't a weekend.
No, it was, I think it was a Thursday.
It was
Wednesday or
like, 'cause you
Thursday.
guys were there.
It was during the week.
And was that like 6 to 8? It was in the evening, wasn't it?
I think it was 5. It was an earlier one.
It was 5?
I think so.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of the right one, because I had to get out of work.
Yeah,
Or-
I think,
so,
yeah.
Yep.
Well, I agree with Scott. I think come June, weekends are really hard to get people to come do something like come to a meeting.
Right.
You know, food truck, yeah, all right, let's go do that, that's fun. But this is, I mean, not that this won't be unfun, but
That's a good way to put it. Come spend the day with us. It won't be unfun.
Not as bad,
there we go.
not as bad as root canal.
So anyway, do we want to make a decision on that? Do we want to talk, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time. If we're going to change the date, we have to do it now.
I'm inclined at this point to go with a weekday evening meeting.
All right, do we want to,
The Wednesday before the 24th?
yeah, I'll be out of town.
Which day is Sunday?
I'll be out of the country still, so I mean, that's fine, but we,
Yeah, I'm traveling on business that week.
What about the
I don't
next
have a
week?
choice.
Is that too late, or should we go?
It's up to you guys. It's up to, Brian, what's your availability? What's that going to do?
I guess it, honestly depends on the day, the specific day and the week. Like I can't, Wednesday, June 28th, I have a board meeting, so I certainly can't do that. I mean, yeah, we put this, well, I guess, how much do you want me to be the facilitator? How much do you want to have the meeting on a weekday? Because I think it could both work, but it may be, I think if you guys can come up with some specific dates that work for you, I'm looking at my calendar. And I can tell you if it works for me.
I'd like to have both.
It sounds like you're thinking about June, not July, right?
Yeah.
And you're thinking about Wednesdays?
No, I'm thinking
Well,
about
I just
weekdays.
threw that out. It
Yeah,
could be
what
any
about
day.
Tuesday or
Yeah,
Thursday?
Thursdays, Mondays, and Tuesdays.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are actually better. I'm usually booked up every Wednesday.
On Wednesday, is that what you said? Yeah. Tuesday?
What about Tuesday, the 27th?
Tuesday, the 27th?
That whole week, or just that day?
More than a day, but I'm not sure exactly where it falls out. I would schedule
And was the week before, some of us are missing? Kelly, are you
I
gone the
mean,
week
yeah,
before?
I have a business trip. I'm gone.
yeah.
Either that or we could do July, but pick a day. What day? You want it on a Tuesday night?
I mean, 27th sounds good.
The 27th, tentative, okay. Is that,
Tuesday, the 27th of June, is that what we?
That's what we
And
decided.
it'll probably be in the evening since it's a weekday, correct?
6 to
Okay.
8?
Yep, okay.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, in theory, I can do, and I feel guilty because that's not like whenever I think, but I have my civilian oversight board the following night, and that would probably, I mean, in June, maybe, I have old eyes, maybe I would drive back that night and not stay over if you were doing something 6 to 8, but.
Oh, that's ridiculous,
I know
Brian.
I'm old, so, but I'm getting old to be driving.
That's too
back
late,
that
because
night.
it'll go later than 8 o'clock.
I have new board members that are going to be starting. 2 out of 5 members are new, so I know when we get to June, we'll still be doing a lot of work, so. Possible, not great, and I might tell you tomorrow, like, I can't do that, that'd be crazy, so.
Could you just let us know? Let me know in the next couple of days.
Okay,
And-
so that is the date.
We have an alternative?
Would the 29th work for you, Thursday, the 29th?
That would be better, because it would be after that meeting, yeah.
You wouldn't have to rush to get back.
Okay.
So does that work for everyone else here?
Yeah.
Thursday, the 29th? Okay.
Oh, my gosh, wow.
Do I need a motion on that?
I move that
Good,
we
no, okay,
have a
nope.
listening session.
He's shaking his head
Okay,
no. He's shaking his head no. Okay. So June 29th, 6 to 8 p.m., and we'll find a location. Okay.
So, going on location, if we go with something along with Robert's vision that you kind of liked, where you come in, there's tables set up, I would say just have it here.
That's
See if
what I
this
would
room's
say.
available. I mean, this is where we meet anyway. People know that we meet here. We're not out scurrying around trying to get
Okay.
another location. There are places, you know, we could use the other room as well. There's
Can you see
areas-
if this room is available on the 29th? Do you have that connection, or is that,
That's my responsibility, and I'm happy to do it.
that's your responsibility? Oh, well, thank
I will
you.
see this also.
Oh, my goodness.
I was just
Okay.
going to contact
June
Michelle
tw-
for you,
yeah.
so.
Okay. Can you let me know?
You know, I'll let you know in the morning.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
Great.
So we're going to set it,
So I will just say, I feel like, maybe that to too many different places, but I feel like there was a conversation about how we could not to have it in the city facility or the town facility, so it didn't feel like, so it felt like it was more in the community and not just, here's another meeting at the prior facility of the town of Bennington.
well,
And I will just point out, and I'm sorry, because I'm not trying to be critical of anybody, I'm including myself in this, you know, I've been to many meetings where you get to the end, we've gone over, we're tired, we're sort of making decisions, and I recognize that there's not a lot of time to figure this out, but I'm wondering about the wisdom of turning this into a Thursday night meeting that it's like another CPARB meeting in the same room, and hoping it's going to be a completely different experience. It could well be, but there's something about that that's feeling like it's slipping into turning into another CPARB meeting.
well, I think that the challenge, Brian, honestly comes from, we don't have a whole lot of options. I've talked with the schools, we've talked, you know, we have some possibilities at some schools, but we run into significant acoustic issues, maybe some I don't want to say availability, but there are some members that felt that the auditorium structure was just a little bit too separated from us. So they're really, when you talk about locations, we've talked about Lower Willow, but it's outside, so that means that we're really weather dependent. And Mother Nature is not nice. If you've seen our weather this week, you'll know that. So when we look, there's just not a lot of availability for us on some things. So, and this is accessible. People can walk, it's close, you know, for people who don't have transportation. So.
Let me ask the chief a question. If you're in charge, you might know this. Is the building fully ADA compliant?
Yes.
How do you get in downstairs if you're in a wheelchair? Is there a button to push to open the door? Or?
You just come right through the back doors.
Yeah.
As far as a button to push, there's not a button on the door to push, someone have to be able to in. It's because it's really a locked facility most of the time.
But so it's not fully ADA compliant?
Well, it's compliant in the sense that we can put people in the elevators, bring them up to the third floor,
Right.
And things like that. But there's no buttons to push to
Open
the
doors.
door. Correct.
All right, thanks.
All right. Okay, so we're looking at June 29th, Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m., hopefully here. And you'll let us know. Okay.
Yay.
All right, next.
So I think I stopped sharing my screen just because I realized that like you guys are just tiny. I can share, but I think that was the last real item. I just wanted to kind of come back and make sure that we figured out. I guess the outstanding piece is the small groups, but I don't feel like we're necessarily in a place where we're going to come to consensus on that.
I don't think we're there yet.
No. So I think that is the end of my session. I know it's 8:30 and you still have the communications committee report. So I know we're running a little bit late, but I'm sorry this took so long. I'm hoping it's helpful, and, we will make this work out.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Do we invite any community comment about all this or
No,
not?
no, this is our training.
Okay.
So anyway, okay. So next on the agenda are the committee updates. And the first committee update is the outreach. So Robert, I know we've pretty much gone through a lot of it with Brian, but anything to add?
Me? No, I thought William was going to make the next outreach update.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. I didn't realize we were even doing an update. I know we had our meeting and we discussed things, but I didn't realize we were doing an exact report on that. I apologize if I did say I was going to do that. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, how about the communications committee? Could we vote on the charge?
So
and the
1 second.
communications plan?
Okay. So for the outreach committee, just for an FYI, we met last week and we talked about some suggestions for the listening session. We talked about some different groups to bring in and some of, our goals as far as like the introduction and everything. So a lot of it was what you had covered here. And I think because now we have a location to look at, we're pretty good on that. So that was the outreach committee. And now we'll go to the communications committee where we have the charge that was all handed out. So can I have a motion to discuss the communications plan, please?
I so move.
Okay, second?
Second?
Okay, all right. Robert?
Do you want me to read the charge?
You can read
again?
it, yeah. I mean, yes. And then we can talk about it.
We've got the communications plan. Okay, so the charge for the communications committee is to implement and manage a communications plan which will maximize the board's communication with the community, as well as facilitating effective communications between the CPARB, the Bennington Select Board, and the Bennington Police Department. And so we were hoping to get approval of that charge for the committee. And then this also includes the communications plan that was worked out with the communications coordinator with the town of Bennington, Jonas Spivak. I don't think I need to read that whole thing. Everyone's had it for a while.
No, the only question I have on the charge is, does it need to say something in there about, as being directed by the board or pertaining to motions by the board? Does that have to be in there?
I don't know. I never considered
I'm just
that.
asking.
It's generally practice that the board tasks their subcommittees with
So
particular
is it
jobs.
presumed
It doesn't
that
have
it's
to be in
there,
the
or
title.
it doesn't have to be?
No, but it's just generally assumed.
That was really the only question I had on it.
So are we voting the communication plan as well as the charge or just the charge?
I would recommend if we could approve the entire document.
I think it goes together.
Okay, then we should change our motion because right now I've got the communication. So you move.
It's all part of the plan. It's all one thing on here.
Yes.
The charge and the plan.
Okay.
It's all one thing. Any other questions or comments? Scott? Let me go to the board first, please. Okay? Okay. Jeff?
I'm good.
Okay.
Good. Good.
Any other
Yes.
questions?
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, no, I thought we were going to.
Okay. Jack?
Jack Rossiter-Munley from Bennington. Just sort of a clarification and a question. It's not listed on the agenda that this is going to be voted on tonight, and I don't believe that this information was shared in any sort of packet about the meeting ahead of time.
It was in the meeting minutes last month.
I know it was in the
So,
meeting minutes last
okay.
month, but there was another board committee that was possibly going to present its charge as well, and I just wanted to check about that just as a process question.
Thank you.
Well, I remember we were going to vote on this 2 or 3 months ago, And Tom said, no, you've got to have it on the agenda.
So Tom, do I need to specifically list that on an update, or is that, or are we?
My phone's not cooperating. She's specifically in that section.
Towards the bottom.
Yeah, I see it.
It doesn't matter, if it has to go to the next month. Okay, so next month, this will be on the agenda to be voted on, as will the other committees. So that pretty much concludes all of the updates for the committees.
I think we have to withdraw the motion.
I withdraw
Withdraw the motion.
Withdraw
Okay.
second.
Or should I table the?
No, just withdraw it,
I withdraw the motion.
and I will add that to the next meeting specifically. Thank you.
Oh, we lost the police.
Anything else? All right.
I was just going to double check, Marsh, we don't have an update from the research review, right?
Nope.
No, because you haven't been created yet.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize that. Oh, wow. Oh, well, that.
Because I wasn't wise enough to put it on there, so I will do
My
that. I will,
apologies.
no, that's
Okay.
me.
No, no,
That's 100% on me, so thank you. No other updates?
Sorry, I just want to clarify, will the committee charge and the communications plan also be made available ahead of time?
They're already posted. They're in the meeting packets from last month, but I will post them again with the agenda in next month's meeting before we go. But they are in the packets.
On the website, there's agenda minutes and video. I don't know that packets associated with these meetings have been posted there.
Check the website details. It should be posted in the packets. Beth is really good with giving everything to Jonah, and I send everything with the meeting minutes and all of that, so it is posted on the website. And I will make sure it gets posted again. All right, so we've withdrawn that.
One more question after?
Oh, sure.
Well, one sentence comment, and then one question. The comment is, I think when Marsh said that people could speak up about one thing that would change things, he didn't mean it that it was going to be one thing that the CPARB was going to have to do. It was to give people an opportunity, like an open-ended question. And so it would be more of a bonding experience. At least that's the way it came across to me. Then the question is, what would be the smallest number and the largest number of attendees, and what representative spread of the community would you need to attract in order to achieve your goals? And then on a communication side, how would you make a compelling invitation so that if you could accommodate members of the board of some of these people and the individuals who have had their own experience with the police, if you could incorporate all those extremes, which I think would be challenging, but how would you make people feel like whatever day of the week or what time of day, hey, that's something that's going to make a difference, that I want to be a part of this. So that's a big question, but I think it's pretty important how many people you're going to have, where you're going to have it, what it's going to feel like, what they'll come prepared to do, whether the small group or the big, because you're overcoming a skepticism about how much individual people can actually participate. And so you want to show how CPARB is there in that mode and going to invite them. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
So I'm probably going to miss some of the questions because it was multiple questions within one long question. But my thoughts, and I'll open it up to the board afterwards, as far as the number of people. If one person comes, we would have it. The maximum number would be whatever we're in compliance with the building capacity to hold. So, as far as, yes, we would love to have 100 people come, but if 5 or 6 show, we would still do that because it's still important to hear that. And then I think the other question that you had in there, I forget what it was. Oh, the yes. So we are very, very fortunate to have Jonas Spivak and his talents. So we'll be focusing on utilizing that wherever we can, as well as any other, the media type that he can help us with, but also with reaching out to the different groups and the word of mouth. All we can do is invite and offer. We can't make them, want to come. I mean, look at our meetings. Honestly, you guys are here every month. Sometimes we get a new face that comes in and joins. So as far as, how are we going to get a lot of people in there? It'll probably be trial and error. And if this one isn't as successful as we want, then we'll do better the next time and the next time after that. And some people may not want to come to a big listening session. They might not to, but maybe our next thing might be a little smaller outreach, or maybe we can start to get some, I don't know the word I want. I don't want to say recognition, but familiarity with people when they'll see us a little bit more. I mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but I have people coming up and talking to me and telling me things. So, we want it to be fun. It's not going to be an unfun event, but we're going to use what we can to try to get as many people here and to reach out to our other stakeholders and other leaders in the communities in some of those other, marginalized communities, and see if we can get some of them on board to help and support, with either, if they can't be here physically, saying, maybe encouraging some of their clients and participants. So did I answer all of it?
Well, time will tell.
Well, I mean, your question, was there anything that you asked that I didn't address?
She had a suggestion, which I liked too, which was the possibility of making a particular invitation of, have you had an experience with our police that you'd want us to hear? Just a suggestion to put in our bucket.
Also, we're going to be reaching out to, we had that list of stakeholders up there. You saw, reaching out to them in advance and hoping that they will help us get the word out to the populations that they serve. And so that'd be another way of trying to get the message out. So,
I guess I'm thinking, what mix of individual people will give you what you want here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can answer that for you. I'm sorry.
And I don't know that there's anything we want to hear. We just want to hear from people.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm for it.
I would be hoping.
You can say, what do we want to hear? It's what we need to hear. And what we need to hear is what people have to say about their experiences. I may not want to hear what they say, but that's what I need to hear. And there's nothing, I have no agenda where I'm sitting up here and I want people to come in and say something specific to me about their experiences. What I want them to say to me is what happened in their opinion, their feelings. That's what we need to hear. So,
and how they perceive things, their perception.
Yeah. So I don't think we can say what we want to hear. It's what we need to hear. What we need to hear is what people have to say.
I mean, my need in order to attain your goal, which is building a group that, team effort together with the police and the people, the community themselves. That's what I want.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard question to answer as well, because there's so many experiences out there and so many different groups of people are going to perceive things in different ways. Our goal is to open the communications, bring the community in, and make things better to help the marginalized people, the unheard people have a voice, to work with the police to do their job better, to work with the community to make them more at ease with the police who should be doing their job better. It's kind of a difficult answer to give you.
No, and if you can communicate that in your promotion, to say, here's what, this is the spirit of it. that will help get people here.
I hope so.
Sorry.
No, absolutely.
Always.
So, all right. Okay, so next on the agenda, we're done with the committee updates, is the upcoming agenda items. And pretty much the upcoming agenda, a lot of it will be the listening session. Marcia's working on some collaborative community policing information. And we hope to start to invite some stakeholders to come in and talk, so.
And the communications plan.
Yes, next month we'll be voting on the
Yes,
communications
yeah.
and the,
And we're also going to vote on the charge for the research committee,
Yep,
I
both of
thought.
them.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, great.
all right. Anything else on upcoming agenda? Jeff?
Can I just mention something? It's not an agenda item, like kind of at the end of the meeting. I just wanted to make sure that our viewers at home know that on the CPARB webpage of the town's website, we have a community input form on there that you can go in and send anything, thoughts, questions, comments, about Bennington Police Department. It goes to the board chair. You can send that in anonymously if you want. It is not the same as submitting a complaint to the police department or about the police department. It's a comment form, but we invite people to get on there and to let us know what they think about what we're doing here. So that's on the CPARB page of the town's website.
Anything else? Anyone else?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I second.
All those in favor?
Do we have to have discussion?
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.